Okay, he's on. I've asked him to join. We'll just give him a minute.
Okay. Oh, there he is. Okay, so I'd like to call the meeting to order at 4:32. Okay, called to order at 4:32. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general interest thereof? Make that statement now or when the item arises on the agenda. So anything to come to be said there? Okay. Approval of agenda. The recommended motion, oh, never mind. The agenda, I move that the agenda be approved as presented. Is there a mover and seconder? Sam and Stacy. All in favor? Okay. Thank you. That's approved. The committee, I move that the Committee of Adjustment approve the minutes dated December the 17th, 2025, and that they be approved. Were there any errors or omission in the minutes? And then if not, I'd like a mover and seconder. Okay, so I don't see any omissions, so a mover. Rick, a seconder? Stacy. All in favor? Okay, that's approved. Okay, so we'll move on to the variances that we have for tonight. And the first one we're going to deal with is the D13 HEI-26 990 Old Perth Road. So just a minute now, I want to just read the variance here, or read the request. Okay. So the recommendation is that Municipality of Mississippi Mills Committee of Adjustment refuse the motion, a minor variance request for section 8-16 and 8-16.3, item 1 and 2 of the zoning bylaw number 11-83, affecting the subject lands which are legally described as concession 2, west part of lot 7, Ramsey Ward, Municipality of Mississippi Mills, municipally known as 990 Old Perth Road, and that the Municipality of Mississippi Mills Committee of Adjustment approve the minor variance request to section 8-16, 3, number D of zoning bylaw number 11-83, affecting the subject lands which are legally described as concession 2, west part of lot 7, Ramsey Ward, Municipality of Mississippi Mills, municipally known as 990 Old Perth Road, to permit an additional residential unit subject to the following conditions. That the following request and variance to zoning bylaw 11-83 is approved to permit an additional residential unit that is 42% the gross floor area of the primary dwelling, whereas section 18.163D of zoning bylaw number 11-83 requires an additional residential unit to be no more than 40% of the gross floor area of the primary dwelling unit, and that the owners obtain all required building permits and approvals within 2 years of the decision coming to force. So I'm going to ask Drew Brennan, the senior planner, to present the slides and the staff report and the recommended motion for this variance. Are you there, Drew?
I am.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I just want to confirm everyone can hear me okay? Excellent. And before I jump into it, I just want to welcome Sam to the Committee of Adjustment. I wasn't present for our first meeting here at December, and I'm just glad to have you here. So with that, I'm just going to share my screen. And again, if I could get a thumbs up that everyone can see that. Perfect. Thank you so much. So the first variance application tonight is D13-EI-26, and the subject property is 990 Old Perth Road. The purpose and effect of the minor variance application is to accommodate the development of an additional residential unit on the subject property. Specifically, the variance looks at 3 different relaxations to zoning bylaw. Specifically, the proposed ARU is to be 42% of the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, whereas the zoning bylaw requires it to be no more than 40%. The variance proposes that the ARU be 400 meters from the principal dwelling on the subject property, whereas the bylaw requires it to be within 40. Furthermore, the variance proposes that the ARU have no shared private services with the existing principal dwelling, whereas the zoning bylaw requires it to share at least one, being well or septic. Here we can see the subject property outlined in blue on the screen. The property is approximately 27 hectares in size. It is irregular in shape. It is designated rural in the community official plan and zoned rural in the zoning bylaw. It features an existing detached dwelling on the subject property, as well as associated accessory uses being a detached garage, as well as a chicken coop. The subject property features both frontage on Old Perth Road as well as Tatlock Road. Surrounding land uses include rural residential as well as agricultural to the west. Just zooming in on the aerial, we can see the existing residential node on the subject property, again featuring the existing single detached dwelling, detached garage and chicken coop. I will note in 2024, the owner obtained a building permit for an addition on the existing dwelling. The aerials that I was showing are from 2024, so they don't reflect the addition that's been built. But this site plan is from the building permit submission that was ultimately approved. I just wanted to give you a sense of the scale and site elements on the property within the surrounding of the dwelling. Notably, we see here the proposed or existing septic is just located to the north of the existing dwelling, as well as there's a vegetable garden to the northeast. I also note that the addition does feature what we define as a multi-generational unit, but not strictly an additional residential unit based on Ontario Building Code, meaning that there are entrances between the 2 units, making it not legally a suite per se. I did conduct a site visit, but unfortunately we do have quite a bit of snow on the ground, so it is hard to discern site features. But this street view from 2019 gives us a sense of the grade of the property. Again, it doesn't reflect the addition of the addition on the dwelling. I think it's important to note for this application, the severance history of the property and how that relates to our current severance policies in the community official plan. So the property itself is a result of the natural severance occurring of the original township lot by Old Perth Road. We can see it bisecting what was the original township lot. From there, there's been 3 subsequent severances, all of which occurring in the late 70s. Under our community official plan, you're only able to sever a landholding as of July 1st, 1973, twice, plus the remnant. So in this case, the subject properties exhausted all current severances under our current policies. So the proposed ARU is a single-story structure. It's proposed to have a GFA of approximately 148 square meters, which represents, again, approximately 42% of the gross floor area of the existing dwelling. It's to have a flat roof and a height of approximately 4.5 meters measured from the top of the roof to the finished grade. Here we can see an overall context plan highlighting the location of the existing dwelling as well as the location of the proposed ARU. Just noting again that it is proposed to be 400 meters from the existing dwelling. And again, this site plan gives us a more scoped idea of what's being proposed in the separate location for the ARU. And again, here's a street view image giving us a sense of the area where the ARU is proposed is generally cleared, and there's no obvious site constraints that would prevent it from being in this location. In terms of our evaluation of the minor variance, I feel it's important to bring up provincial regulations regarding additional residential units. So specifically under the Planning Act, no official plan or zoning bylaw can prohibit up to 3 residential units on municipally serviced urban residential lots. So that that restriction or permission does not apply to unserviced lots outside of the urban boundary. Notwithstanding, the provincial planning statement clarifies that where a dwelling is permitted in prime agricultural areas, which are traditionally unserviced, those properties may contain up to 2 ARUs. Notwithstanding, no provincial legislation permits ARUs as of right on unserviced lands outside of prime agricultural areas. Despite this, our zoning bylaw does permit up to 2 ARUs in the RU zone. All other provisions of the zoning bylaw regulating the size, location, and servicing of ARUs does not conflict with any provincial statutes at this time. When evaluating a minor variance application, the Planning Act gives us 4 tests to look at. So specifically, does the proposal maintain the intent of the official plan? Does it maintain the intent of the zoning bylaw? Is it generally desirable? And then is it minor in nature? It's important to note that if a variance fails one of these 4 tests, the variance fails in total. It's not a matter of best 3 out of 4. If there's a single failure, the outcome must be a refusal of the variance. So with that, I'm going to provide an overview of staff's analysis based on each test. And I'm going to break it out into the 3 different variances that are being requested. So as I previously mentioned, the subject property is designated rural in the community official plan. Rural properties are, of course, permitted to have single detached dwelling and accessory uses. Section 3.6.9 of the community official plan, which deals specifically with ARU, states that ARUs are permitted in buildings or structures ancillary to single detached dwellings. As such, staff are the opinion that the proposed variance, proposing that the primary dwelling unit be 42% of the gross floor area of the principal dwelling is in conformity with the general intent and purpose of the community official plan. With that being said, section 3.6.9 also states that ARUs should share at least one of 2 private services in the rural areas, that being well or septic. The use of the word should in the policy acknowledges that there are a limited number of circumstances where sharing of services would be unfeasible. This is typically seen where there are natural heritage features or hazardous topography that would make it, again, unfeasible to establish that shared servicing. With that being said, the intent of the community official plan is to ensure that both dwellings on the property remain physically clustered and that the ARU is clearly in addition to the primary residential use. Why this is important is because compact residential footprints in the rural areas ultimately reduces the residential influence zones for areas that we see needed to accommodate minimum distance 2 separation setbacks. Just as a quick explainer, MDS looks at land use compatibility between residential and agricultural uses. So specifically when a property owner proposes to develop a new or expanded livestock facility on their property, they need to look at all properties within 750 meters of their own and assess whether there's a sensitive land use being a dwelling within that catchment area. If so, They ultimately need to provide an MDS calculation using the AgriSuite platform, which looks at the type of livestock they personally own, the size of the barn that they have, and ultimately the design capacity. From that, a setback distance is provided, which explicitly states how far that livestock facility needs to be from those sensitive land uses. So again, the intent of the COP is to cluster residential uses so that this conflict doesn't exist in the future, well, is limited in the future when individuals are proposing those new or expanded livestock facilities. In staff's review of the proposal, there are no, it's in our professional opinion that there's no identifiable site constraints near the existing primary dwelling that would prevent the area from being closer proximity to where shared servicing would be feasible. Ultimately, staff are the opinion that the variances to section 6.16 sub 3 sub G and 816 sub 3 sub I sub double I is not in conformity with the general intent and purpose of the official plan. The second test is, does the variance maintain the intent of the zoning bylaw? So again, just as a recap, the area is proposed to be 42% of the gross floor area of the existing principal dwelling, whereas the zoning bylaw requires it to be no more than 40%. The intent of the zoning bylaw is to allow the construction of areas that are ancillary to the principal dwelling and clearly in addition to. The scale at which the GFA is being proposed to be increased is quite slight, and to a degree where the size will remain distinct in relation to the principal dwelling. As such, staff are of the opinion that the proposed variance increase the GFA of the primary dwelling unit from 40 to 42% is in conformity with the general intent of the zoning bylaw. The subject variants are also proposing that the area be located 400 meters from the existing primary dwelling, whereas the zoning bylaw requires it to be no more than 40 meters away. In addition, the ARU is proposed to have its own private services, both well and septic, as opposed to sharing one with the existing primary, whereas the zoning bylaw requires it to share at least one. The zoning bylaw, specifically in section 816 sub 3 sub B, explicitly states that ARUs are not to be standalone primary uses capable of being severed. With that in mind, the zoning bylaw intends for ARUs to remain clustered with the primary dwelling to, again, ensure that compact residential footprint, prohibit the creation of severable residential uses, and minimize impacts on adjacent agricultural uses by protecting that MDS2 area. In this case, staff are of the opinion that the proposed area would create a second independent residential node on the property that otherwise would not be permitted through lot creation under our current severance policies. The physical separation of the ARU would make it functionally capable of a future severance if our municipal policies changed, or if the province came down with additional changes through the Planning Act or PPS. As such, establishing this additional node expands the residential influence area and limits the opportunities, again, for newer expanded agricultural uses on adjacent properties. As such, staff are the opinion that sections 816 sub 3 sub G and 816 sub 3 sub I sub double I are not in conformity with the general intent of the zoning bylaw. The third test is whether the variances are desirable in nature. Ultimately, the proposed area would positively contribute to the housing supply in the rural areas, specifically actually without requiring the creation of a new lot, which ultimately increases the housing choice and range of living arrangements in the rural areas. Additionally, the area is not anticipated to generate increased noise, traffic, or servicing demands that would negatively impact surrounding properties. As such, staff are the opinion that all requested variances represent appropriate and desirable development. The last test to consider is whether the variances are minor in nature. And as a reminder, minor is a qualitative judgment as opposed to solely a quantitative one. That being said, the numerical deviation does provide us context regarding the extent of the proposed deviation. In this case, no negative impacts are anticipated on adjacent properties from the increase in the gross floor area, given that All other setback requirements and height requirements are being met. So we're not anticipating any overshadowing or visual intrusion. In addition, we're of the opinion that it is a compatible built form with the rural character. And as such, staff are the opinion that the proposed increase in gross floor area from 40 to 42% is minor in nature. So the provincial planning statement gives provincial directions in terms of matters of interest. The Planning Act stipulates that all planning decisions are to be consistent with the PPS. So that section 2.6.1 of the PPS explicitly directs planning authorities to support a diversified rural economy by protecting agricultural and other resource related uses on rural lands, and by directing non-related development to areas where it will minimize constraints on these uses. So just to be clear on that, non-related development in this case would be anything but agricultural, such as residential development. In this case, the request is to increase the separation distance between the principal and an ARU from 40 meters to 400, which represents a 10 times increase to the bylaw requirement. Again, staff are the opinion that there's no identifiable site constraints within the vicinity of the existing principal dwelling that would justify why compliance with the bylaw could not be met. In addition, this would create an additional residential node where no further severances are permitted, so you can't establish this through any other methods. In addition, the request for independent services is directly tied to the request for the increased separation distance. Cumulatively, we're of the opinion that this is not minor. As such, staff are the opinion that the requested variances to sections 8.16 sub 3 sub G and 8.16 sub 3 sub I sub double I of the zoning bylaw are not minor. As such, staff are recommending refusal of the minor variance requests to sections 8.16 sub 3 sub G and 8.16 sub I sub double I, and approval of the request to 8.16 sub 3 sub D in accordance with the recommendations shown on the screen. Prior to ending, I just want to acknowledge that both the owner and applicants are on the meeting tonight and will be speaking. They have also provided letters to the committee in advance of the meeting, evaluating different options on the subject property for where an ARU could have potentially been accommodated, but ultimately noting certain encumbrances that would prevent them from doing so. Staff respectfully and professionally disagree with that analysis and are of the opinion that there is a viable building envelope within 40 meters of the existing principal dwelling. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Drew. Deputy Mayor Manelli, I thought I saw your hand up. Did you need to add something to Drew's messaging? You're on mute. You're mute. Can't hear you. Okay. Can't hear you.
There, how's
There.
that?
That's much better. Thank you. So
I'm
now
not
you
used to
start
being
over.
I'm not used to being a participant.
Well, I thought I saw your hand up, so I thought maybe you were wanting to add something to what Drew was saying.
No, it's fine. I'll wait till comments, till everybody has a chance to speak first.
Okay, does anyone, do any of the committee members have any questions? So I understand that the owner and the applicant are on the line. Do they have anything they'd like to comment on or add to Drew's presentation? I'm not sure where they are. I thought they were speaking tonight, Drew.
Madam Chair, I believe Jen's just working in the background with them to get them on the call.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, there they are. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, all.
This is painful.
So did you have
Hey.
anything you'd like to add to Mr. Brennan's messaging?
Did you actually read Nick's letter explaining why it's not feasible for us to add on to the services? Because they've already been added on to by his mother-in-law.
Yes. Does anyone, what about the rest of you? Have you any comments on those letters?
Did they read them?
I did, definitely read them. Yeah, I did.
You read.
Thank you.
I did too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because where they are, we can't go to the septic side. There's no room there. The other side is where they have their, you know, their garage, their garden, all of that stuff. So they've already expanded to allow for an additional, you know, mother-in-law suite or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Yeah. We also, our size is incorrect. It's not 42%. So that wasn't something that was ever in there.
This is to Drew. Oh, hi, Nick.
Yeah.
And to Drew, is that the drawing that you have there for the house, for the ARU, is 1,500 square feet, which is only 38.6% of the resident, the main resident.
Okay, let Nick talk.
So through, if I may, through the chair, so the information that was used for these variances was taken from the application. So I took the square footages provided in the document submitted by yourselves to determine what variances were required.
Yeah, there should only have been 2, not 3. The size was not, we are under 40%.
So, Nicholas, you like to speak?
Whatever.
Yes,
Whatever.
please.
Let Nick speak.
I would posit that one of the significant reasons that we are asking for the distance is to respect the rural character of our neighborhood. We deeply respect our neighbors, and the building envelope that Drew identifies would significantly impede the privacy of me and my neighbors. The space that is within the 40-meter envelope would be immediately between me and my neighbor, would require that we adjust the septic bed that was just put in to stay inside of that 40-meter envelope, and place a cluster of homes that would have absolutely no privacy between them in a manner that would be significantly more like a suburban setting. The desire to place the ARU where we have located it is altruistic intent, and there is no desire for any kind of severance. The intent would be for one of my daughters to, after Deborah and Shane age gracefully and move on, have an affordable home and stay on the same property and live here alongside my wife and I and our other 2 children. The impact partly on agricultural lands, if the distance that is used to begin the process of evaluating a livestock facility is 750 meters, that small space of our property is less than that, as well has a rural use on either side of it already. It, without having that ARU in that location, already has that impediment to development for my neighbor who is farming a field across the street. I understand that the request is for the distance to be 10 times the distance stipulated. It is the most amenable, reasonable location at our disposal. And I would say that I view it as minor in nature, as it is clustering the residents along the roadway that is the frontage that we have at our disposal, as opposed to trying to force multiple buildings too close together, which would diminish the rural character dramatically.
Okay, any comments from the committee? Questions, comments? Ms. Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm just concerned about it being severed after the fact. It's a lot of money for an ARU to build a complete house with septic and well. So that's one of my concerns. And the other is the 410 times isn't a minor variance, I find anyways. But
I'm sorry, what do you mean you're worried about severing after the fact?
after the fact that if you move on or somebody moves on and somebody wants to sell a property, there's no way that it'll ever be severed, right? The town won't let,
No, we're not, no.
you know that, eh?
Yes,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
As long as you know that.
Yeah.
And
There's no,
that's that was one of my concerns when I seen the layout of the property. It looks
Drew?
like another lot to me.
Yeah, there is no desire to sever it.
Drew?
Yeah,
You-
through the chair, I just want to bring up this point where if the planning department was to receive a site plan as such through a building permit application, we would assess this as a second dwelling as opposed to an additional residential unit, as it's creating a totally separate residential node on the subject property. And the zoning bylaw explicitly does not permit a second dwelling on a subject property. So I do understand that there's concerns about, the severability of an ARU. I would stipulate that this is not even an ARU based on the location and lack of shared servicing. If committee was to entertain it as an ARU, there are specific criteria that we went over for whether this proposed variance would pass. And again, it would need to pass all 4 tests in order for the variance to be successful. If committees of the opinion that even one of the 4 tests have failed, then the variance itself fails as well.
Sam, did you have any comments, questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to emphasize that my understanding is that this goes beyond what should be approved under a minor variance. An accessory residential unit is intended to be in close proximity. That's kind of the definition or the intent and how they're planned for. And I do interpret this as having the effect of a greater approval that would require far more significant steps and processes than a minor variance really contemplates. So while I don't necessarily oppose the development itself or the intent behind it or ascribe any sort of malintent, I do believe that I have to oppose this because it's not. It does fail, in my opinion, the minor variance test.
Stacy?
I have a quick question, and I don't know if there's anyone on the call who would be able to answer it, but I was wondering how this application would compare to the application that we considered a while back on the Blakeney Road. It was a Stewart property where they had a house on but then maybe on that one, it was on shared services, I think. I think it was before you were on the committee though, Drew. So.
Just through the chair, Melanie is on the call, so I might defer that question to her if she does recall the nature of that variance.
Thanks, Chair. I don't recall specifically the nature of the variance, but I can say that in the 5 years, in the past 5 years, we haven't had a variance for not having shared services. That's always been something that's been maintained for ARU construction. We have had variances for gross floor area relief. And the one that you're referring to, I believe it might have been a very slight variance in terms of the distance, and that was because there was a certain separation they needed in terms of their septic system connections.
Mhm.
But I would say no, everybody else, you know, we actually have quite a few ARUs built in the rural area
Yeah,
on
we
a
do.
annual basis, and they all meet generally speaking, they meet the requirements of, they definitely all meet the requirements of the shared services. And I think only the one had that minor increase in the separation distance.
Thank you for that clarification. That helps.
Okay, so I think we're ready then to look at, now what we've done is separate the recommendations and the motions. So I'll do these as two separate motions. The first motion being that the Municipality of Mississippi Mills Committee of Adjustment refuse the minor variance request to section 8.163G and 8.163II of zoning bylaw number 11-83, affecting the subject lands which are legally described as concession to west part of Lot 7, Ramsey Ward, Municipality of Mississippi Mills, municipally known as 990 Old Perth Road. So is there a mover and seconder for that motion? Rick's, okay, Deputy Mayor Manelli has moved it. Is there a seconder? Stacy seconds. All in favor of the motion to refuse that portion of the request? All right. Okay, so it was moved by Deputy Mayor Manelli, seconded by Stacy, that portion of the motion of the variance request be refused. All in favor? We've done that. Okay, so that's parts approved. The second motion, that the Municipality of Mississippi Mills Committee of Adjustment approve the minor variance request to section 8.163D of zoning bylaw number 1183, affecting the subject lands which are legally described as concession to west part of Lot 7, Ramsey Ward, Municipality of Mississippi Mills, municipally known as 990 Old Perth Road, to permit an additional residential unit subject to the following conditions: that the following requested minor variance of zoning bylaw 11-83 is approved to permit the additional residential unit that is 42% the gross of floor area of the primary dwelling, whereas section 8.163D of zoning bylaw number 11-83 requires an additional residential unit to be no more than 40% to the gross floor area of the primary dwelling unit. And secondly, that the owners obtain all the required building permits and approvals within 2 years of the decision coming into full force and effect. Is there a mover for that portion of the request? Sam and Stacy. All in favor for approving that portion? Okay. Thank you. That's approved. Okay. So can we move on to the second request now for minor variance D13-125-26-129-133 Bridge Street. And I'll let Drew, as a senior planner, present the presentation for that request as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the second variance tonight is D13-125-26. The subject property is 129 through 133 Bridge Street. The subject variance application seeks to permit the development of a semi-detached dwelling featuring 2 additional residential units on the subject property. So specifically, the variance application seeks to permit a lot area of 292 square meters per unit of the semi-detached dwelling, whereas the zoning bylaw requires 320 square meters per unit. And I'll just pause there to explain that our zoning bylaw contemplates performance standards for semi-detached dwellings on a per unit basis. So when I say the bylaw requirement is 320 square meters per unit, the cumulative would be 640 square meters for the entire lot. So just in that same vein, the application is seeking a reduced lot frontage of 9.2 meters per unit, whereas the zoning bylaw requires 10 meters of frontage. And additionally, the variance is looking for a reduced front yard setback for a semi-detached dwelling from 4.5 meters to 6 meters. I will mention for the committee's benefit that there is a provision in the zoning bylaw which allows for a reduced front yard setback as of right when dwellings on adjacent properties do not meet the full 6-meter requirement. It was observed by staff that it appears that both dwellings on the adjacent properties from the subject property do not meet the full 6-meter requirement. Notwithstanding, we felt it was best to be safe to include this variance requirement and to confirm the as of right variance afforded by the zoning bylaw is also 4.5 meters. Here we can see the subject property denoted on blue. The subject property is a result of a recently completed severance from 125 Bridge Street. I will note that the subject property is what I would say inappropriately addressed, being 129 to 133. The applicant originally was proposing to develop a triplex on the subject property. So there's 3 associated civic addresses for the property. Notwithstanding, given that it's a single conveyable lot, the municipality typically only signs one conveyable address or one address, such as 129 Bridge. The property itself is just shy of 600 square meters. It's surrounded by low-density residential to the northeast and south, and then there's an institutional use across the street to the west. And of course, has frontage on Bridge Street. It is designated residential in the community official plan and zoned R2 in the zoning bylaw. Again, it was quite snowy when I did my site visit, so I did pull a street view from Google Maps. Here we can see the retained property on the left with the existing detached dwelling. The subject property that we're discussing tonight is on the right. We can see it is vacant with a number of mature trees on the property. I will just note too, there is an existing driveway, which is subject to an easement in favor of the subject property, as well as there's an easement on the subject property in favor of 125 Bridge. Again, just accommodating a joint access between the two. The development itself is a 3-story semi-detached dwelling. It is to have a flat roof with an approximate height of 9.64 meters. Given the construction of the building, we measure from the highest point to the finished grade. You'll notice that there is a rooftop access proposed on the building, which does exceed the permitted height in the R2 zone of 11 meters. So specifically, the total building would be 12.62. The zoning bylaw does consider stairwells as being a permitted height projection, which can exceed the maximum permitted height. We would confirm during building permit submission that it meets OBC to be considered a permitted projection. If it wasn't, an additional variance would be required for the height. As I mentioned previously, 2 ARUs are proposed for the semi-detached dwelling, specifically one on each side within the basement. The zoning bylaw does contemplate that an ARU can take up the entirety of a below grade floor without consideration of 40% of the gross floor area of the rest of the principal dwelling. Here we can see the site plan. Overall, again, the setback is 4.67 meters. The other performance standards that are being requested have to do with the lot fabric as opposed to the development itself. The proposed semi is to have a shared parking lot at the rear with 4 total parking stalls, which would meet minimum requirements of the zoning bylaw. We do have 4 tests that we look at when evaluating a zoning or a minor variance request. In this case, staff are of the opinion that the minor variance meets all 4 tests for the reasonings provided in the report. As such, we are recommending approval of the minor variance in accordance with the recommendations shown on the screen. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Drew. Any questions from the committee? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
I'm wondering about parking. for all these units. So the parking lot's in the back. Does it conform to our standards of 1.5 parking spots per unit?
So through the chair, the zoning bylaw requires 1 parking space per principal unit in a semi-detached dwelling. In this case, the semi has 2 principal units, so 2 parking stalls are required. In addition, the zoning bylaw requires 1 parking space per ARU. In this case, there's 2 ARUs, so 2 additional spaces are required. 4 spaces are proposed to be provided, which meets the minimum requirements under the zoning bylaw.
So how many units are we talking about altogether with the ARUs?
Through the chair, 4 total units.
4 total units.
Was there any comments from the neighbors?
Through the chair, we did receive a comment from the direct neighbor just yesterday, so 125 Bridge Street. His concerns were with regards to the shared driveway, which I will clarify is established through an easement and a joint use and maintenance agreement that's registered on title. The concern was not with regards to the variances that are in question, but more so a civil matter in terms of how the driveway is to be divided between the 2 properties. My understanding is they did have a conversation with the property owner, and that will be worked out outside of the variance process.
Okay. Sam, any comments, questions? Stacy? And I'm gathering there's no one here from none of the applicants are here or the owner?
Through the chair, I'm being told that we do have 1 person here.
Okay, so we'll see if they have anything they'd like to add. Yes, Mr. Basile?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Do you
Yeah,
have
but now I've lost-
anything? Okay, would you have anything you'd like to add to Drew's presentation?
Well, I spoke with, in regards to the driveway. This development has its own driveway. If you go back to one of the photos that Drew was showing, where he showed the existing 125 and the vacant lot, there is a rebar at the pin that shows the driveway on the left and the driveway on the right where the excavator is sitting. The driveway on the right where the excavator is sitting, that's just in rough. There's no gravel down. There was no reason for it. Once we dig the hole, that'll all get disrupted anyways. And then once we put the foundations in, then we'll put the driveway in. But there is no issue there whatsoever. He didn't remember the conversation, but what he's got is he's got his own driveway and I've got my own driveway on the other side. So that's not a problem whatsoever. As for the rest of it, I would have preferred to be right up at the sidewalk for setback, but the staff wasn't of the same mind. So I'm happy with whatever you guys want to do.
I guess you were lucky you got the distance you did then. Okay, so any other questions or comments? Okay, so I'll read the motion that the Municipality of Mississippi Mills Committee of Adjustment approve the minor variance application affecting the subject lands which are legally described as Lot 7 of Plan 6262, Parts 3 and 4 of Reference Plan 27R 12397, Elmont Ward, Municipality of Mississippi Mills, municipally known as 129 to 133 Bridge Street, to permit a semi-detached dwelling with 2 additional residential units subject to the following conditions. That the following requested minor variance to zoning bylaw 11-83 are approved to permit a semi-detached dwelling with a front yard setback of 4.5 meters, whereas table 14.2A of zoning bylaw number 11-83 requires a minimum front yard setback of 6 meters for a semi-detached dwelling in the R2 zone. To permit a semi-detached dwelling on a lot with a frontage of 9.2 meters per principal dwelling unit, whereas table 14.2A of zoning bylaw number 11-83 requires a minimum lot frontage of 10.0 meters per principal dwelling unit in a semi-detached dwelling in the R2 zone. Thirdly, to permit a semi-detached dwelling on a lot with an area of 292 meters squared per principal dwelling unit, whereas table 14.2A of the zoning bylaw number 11-83 requires a minimum lot area of 320 meters squared per principal dwelling unit in a semi-detached dwelling in the R2 zone. That the owners obtain all necessary approvals to amend the municipal addressing of the subject property to 129 Bridge Street to reflect that the property constitutes a single conveyable lot prior to applying for a building permit. That the owners obtain all required building permits and approvals within 2 years of the decision coming into full force and effect. Is there a mover for that motion? Stacy, a seconder? Rick? All in favor? Okay, thank you.
Hey, Wilson.
Hey, you look good, Stace. Haven't seen you in years.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Okay, I think you did well. You got your distance and everything, so we're good. All right,
Thank you
any
very-
other new business?
Thanks very much.
Okay, other new business. Yes, Stacy.
No, I was just saying
Oh.
goodbye.
Okay, all right, so the next meeting is scheduled for March the 18th. And if that's everything, then we'll have a motion that the meeting be adjourned and a mover and seconder for that.
Before I move that, I'd like to say you did a great job, Connie.
Thank you, Rick.
Meeting. Very good job.
Thank you.
And I will be absent for the March 18th.
I beg your pardon? You'll be absent?
Yes, I will
Okay.
be in Italy, so I will be absent.
I think you're just because you were going to have to sit here next time. Okay, Jennifer will know anyway on 18th. Okay. Okay, so everyone's in favor of adjournment. All right, so we are adjourned at 5:23.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay,
everyone.
thanks.
Good evening.